Hello and welcome to the Love, Peace, Truth, Karma podcast. I am not Leanne Brown. I am Marie Friend from Harmonic Egg Healing. But today we thought we'd just switch it up a little bit. And today we're putting Leanne in the spotlight and I'm going to be interviewing you.
If you're in China, you just know it's corrupt. They want it to be like that here.
People are pretending to be 12-year-old kids, mate, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're 40-year-old men.
Now we're getting bombarded with all these death numbers, but there's no context there.
He'd got one child pregnant, he'd raped many others, and we had evidence to prove that.
Do you think evil still exists today as it did back then? And the answer should very simply be yes.
Hello and welcome to your own podcast.
I think I'm out of a job. You did that better than me, one take as well. Fuming. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So we thought we'd just switch it up a little bit today because I think that your viewers would like to know a little bit more about you,
Yeah.
where you came from, what you're about, where you're at now, and everything in between. We're going to do a whistle-stop tour of your life. And so let's start right at the very beginning. So I only found before when we were chatting off camera that you're actually from Cumbria.
Yeah.
Didn't realise that. So you were born in Cumbria.
Yeah.
How long you were in Cumbria? What was life like growing up in Cumbria? Tell us a little bit about that.
It was really nice. You know, when I think back, I didn't appreciate it because, I mean, it wasn't like the Lake District, but it wasn't far away. You know, it's at Barrow Furnace and it was by the coast. So there was the seaside and we spent lovely summers there. And it was actually really nice living there. I lived in a little village from when I was 13. I lived in a little village called Newton, where my mum still lives now, and it was surrounded by fields. It was like a little park across the road, like really quiet village with a little village hall where we had like the youth club every Monday night, and it was a nice upbringing, and obviously just desperate to get out into the big city. And
so would you say you had an idyllic upbringing?
I wouldn't say idyllic, because anyone's upbringing idyllic.
Sounds it, sort of, countryside.
Yeah, idyllic in the sense of like the surroundings and it was fun, but I did get up to a bit of mischief, don't get me wrong. My dad left when I was 13, so that was...
How was that?
It was, well, he'd been working away for a number of years beforehand anyway. He worked on like the oil rigs. And so I'd been used to him not being there a lot. And he ended up going to work in the Philippines. And then sort of my mum and him parted. And I've previously spoken openly about how he was, I was witnessed him being abusive to my mum,
Right.
physically and verbally over the years when I think about it. But I was a bit of a daddy's girl when I think of how my relationship with my dad, I do think it hit me probably harder than my brother. So I've got one brother.
Is he older or younger?
3 years older than me.
Right, okay.
I can't actually say that it hit me harder than my brother because I wouldn't actually know that, would I? But I think because I was a bit of a daddy's girl. I was a gymnast. So my dad, and again, isn't it funny how like your memories, things that stand out to you potentially may have just been one memory that stood out to me, and me thinking that my dad idolised me doing my gymnastics, and it was this one time. And when I actually think, was he there at other competitions? Or, because I remember my mum being there. I remember my mum taking me to the training every week, and like however many times a week I used to go, like 5 times a week. My mum was at every competition. But this one specific time, my dad came to the competition and I won all 5 golds on all the apparatus. And my dad sung "We Are the Champions" all the way home.
Aww.
And that will always stick in my mind,
memory.
Of thinking like, how much he loved me, and so I suppose when he left, I I still hold a lot of rejection from that. It's trauma, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Obviously, seeing him be abusive to my mum.
Was that on a regular basis or just a few occasions?
I witnessed it twice. Once when we lived in Dalton, which I probably would have been about, it's hard to pinpoint the age. I think I was about 8 or 9. And then it was just before like he left, when I was probably around 12, 13. and that wasn't nice. And it was all to do with that, obviously the breaking down with the relationship. Had he done it in between that where I hadn't been witnessed? I've never actually really asked my mum that.
So you've never spoken about that with your parents, neither of them?
No, I don't actually have a relationship with my dad anymore, which is really sad.
That's
and this
sad.
is something that I am delving into a bit more with the belief coding and realising the impact that it's actually had on me through my dad leaving and the witnessing of him being abusive. I actually ended up meeting a guy when I was 16, and he ended up being abusive to me.
So you repeated the pattern, basically, which is what we often do with trauma, isn't it? So you've got no contact with your dad at all?
No.
Is it something that you'd like? Would you like contact with him?
You know, part of me would. And I keep saying, I feel like I've got to contact him. I feel like I've just got to like let go. And I've been doing the Ho'oponopono and sending the love there. And, you know, like little things have been coming up and memories, and they're always to like spring back to my dad. And he's getting older now as well. Like my mum's going to be 70 in July. And
regardless of what's happened in the relationship, excuse me, between your mum and dad, you know, you've clearly got lovely memories of your dad, loving memories.
Yeah. Obviously, later on, the reason why we don't have a relationship, we did have a relationship. Like, we parted when he went to the Philippines, and this is again the rejection side of it. Like, first he left, then he was writing to me a lot. Like, bearing in mind I was going through like that teenage adolescent stage, like
Very
13,
difficult.
you know what I mean, 13, 14. And then he met a girl who ended up ripping him off, and she was into black magic apparently, and like his writing become very distorted, and then he sort of just stopped writing, and I stopped writing to him, and he stopped writing to me. And then when I seen him later on in life, I asked him why, and he said, well, you didn't write to me, so why should I write to you? And for me as a parent, I found it so difficult to get my head around
mentality.
that.
Yeah.
Because obviously he detached from us, obviously massively. And then he ended up meeting somebody else, and then found out I'd got with Wes, and then wanted to be back in touch with me. Now part of me thought, was it because of the being with Wes and all that attracted him? And like,
so how long is it now since you actually saw your dad or had contact with your dad?
It was my 30th year. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I went over to the Philippines in my 30th year. And then it was very weird. It was very weird, like, experience, because my dad's partner was quite controlling with him and wasn't allowing him to spend the time with me. My brother went, and my brother's partner as well. And it was a strange one, really. It was like, he was still detached from us, you know what I mean? And it was because we'd not seen him for a long time before. And he came back that year, and him and my brother went to the pub, and then they ended up having a big row, and then he ended up leaving, and then that's the last I heard from him. And then I've had another baby since then, and I've got married, and then I've had another baby.
So in between all that time, I mean, you know, your dad had left and gone to the Philippines. When did you leave Cumbria and start, you know, venturing off life on your own?
So when I was 16, I met a guy, and then ended up moving with him.
At 16?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And when I think now, well, my Lily is just about to turn 15, sorry. Hallie's 19, and obviously she's gone off to uni, but I mean, I can't believe my mum let me go.
So you went off and...
Not that she had to say.
I was strong-willed.
Yeah. So he lived down, he actually lived in Wigan, and then he was a car thief. He was a car thief.
Oh, she's led a colourful life.
And he ended up, he was getting done for like stealing these cars, so he was going to be in court. So we had to I was going to turn over a new leaf and move down to down south. So I went with him.
So you went to London?
I went down south. Yeah, it was actually Bedford.
Yeah.
And it was 18 months of craziness, really. It was an abusive relationship. He was quite obsessive and controlling and possessive, and it was a turbulent time for me. And
was he older than you?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
How old was he when you met him then? You were 18, 16?
I think he was 26.
Mm.
Yeah, so yeah. So yeah, it was no phones then. So when obviously it happened and there was an argument and it turned to be, violent, or it wasn't like he was like battering me, but he was.
Well, it was unacceptable and it wasn't the norm, and it's not what a loving relationship should be.
No, it was very volatile. It wasn't good. But I would ring my mum up from the phone box and say, "Can you come and pick me up?" And then she'd obviously set off and then have to stop, because I'd then ring her back. She'd stop at the motorway service and say, "Are you all right?" And I'd say, "No, you can turn around."
Oh God!
He said, "Sorry, everything's going to be fine." And then what I must have put her through, having my 3 girls now, thinking like I would have wanted to come and rip one of my girls out of that situation. But it's like, I think my mum just knew I had to do it for myself. I had to, she kept leaving and setting off and then turning around and a number of times. And in the end, she was just like, "I need to let you do it for yourself. Once you leave on your own, I know that it's the right thing to do." Yeah. And I did finally leave. Something did click in the end.
How long were you with him then? So
only 18 months.
So you left when you were, 18, 19?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
18. I actually had a miscarriage when I was 18, which was obviously the best and worst thing that's probably ever happened to me. I actually hemorrhaged when I was having the miscarriage as well. So, that was me thinking everything's going to be all right because I was pregnant, and then this is going to be different. And then obviously we had massive rows and throwing clothes on the lawn and all sorts. It was and bin bags. And anyways, then I ended up moving back up north, which obviously was closer to home. And then one day I was just like, I don't know what happened. It was just one day I just watched him kicking off, and then I just basically said, "I'm leaving." Yeah.
Did you both move back up north then?
Yeah, together. Yeah.
Is that when you were pregnant?
No. This was after all that had happened, and we'd had a row, and then I just said, "I'm going. I'm leaving." Yeah, and he then literally shriveled up and curled up in a ball, and
so somehow from somewhere you just found the strength to say, "I'm leaving." This is what fascinates me. At what point did something just make you? Because women stay in relationships like that for eternity, never thinking that they've got the strength to leave.
Yeah.
Especially when you're quite controlled.
Yeah.
But at some point, something inside of you said, "No, enough. I've got to get out."
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't know what it was. I had a dog at the time, which I actually left as well. And then I got the dog back and give it to my auntie in the end. But I remember driving, because he didn't really like me working either, but I remember driving, listening. Music, I think, was a massive input on, him listening to empowering music. And I remember listening to M People and Roxette and all them kind of songs. They were I don't know, I just found the strength through music, I feel because I just sort of visualised myself living a different life, and I sort of knew that this wasn't going to be my life, and I didn't want it. And when we moved back, I think because I felt a bit closer to home, so it wasn't as big of a journey. I just found the strength to just sort of. And
did you go back home to mum, or did you? Yeah, you went home to your mum's. And then at what point then? Let's fast forward a little bit, because we know you met Wes Brown. How old were you when you met him? What was the circumstances under which you met him?
So I was 21. And he was 18.
So literally a couple of years later.
Yeah.
How did you meet Wes then?
Oh, God, the story when I met Wes, it's embarrassing. So obviously, I've told this a number of times, but so I was in a club, a nightclub in Manchester, and I was on the shots. And
she's changed since then.
Still love a shot. Maybe more of a turmeric shot now. No, actually, it's not that.
Ginger and lemon shot these days.
Yeah. No, it's all about balance, isn't it, Marie? So yeah, we ended up, me and my friend, we ended up going to this nightclub, and then I'd seen this guy. We'd had a few shots, and it was actually Royals in Manchester. I don't know if you remember that. Obviously, for being from Liverpool, and it had like 3 floors. And I'd seen him, walk past, fancied him, and then caught his eye again at the bottom bar. Walked past him, and I looked at him and I said, "Come here." And then he looked back at me and said, "You come here." So I was going to go over to him, and my friend Danielle, she was like, "Don't you dare go over to him. Play hard to get. Come with me." And I was like, "Okay." So I left him, walked away, and then I was like, "If I don't see that guy again, I'm going to kick off." Like, really fancied him. Anyways, we went into the VIP. We met a friend and took us into the VIP bit, and then seen him stood in the corner with a few of his friends stood around him. By this time, we'd had quite a few tequilas, and I just walked over to him, grabbed him out of his friends group of friends, and pulled him. There was like a couple of steps, and there's a sofa at the top of like behind this bar, and started snogging him. And no, it didn't even say, "What's your name?" or anything. How bad is that? I didn't know who he was. This everyone was like, "Yeah, that old chestnut, you didn't know who he was." But
So
I swear,
at that point, he was already a footballer, a professional footballer.
He'd been at United since he was 14.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, but I didn't know who it was. I mean, bearing in mind, this bar was like renowned for all like your Beckham and Giggsy and you know, all the Lee Sharp and all. I used to go in this bar, and all these girls used to go, and we were dancing at the time. So obviously we moved to Manchester and become a table dancer.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you know that?
She missed that bit out.
I'm not ashamed of it, and it's part of my journey,
Of course.
and it is part of my growth. And actually, I will just skip back. You know, moving to Manchester, which happened within a year of obviously me being back. I met up with a friend of mine who I used to do gymnastics with, who I'm still a dear friend of mine now still, and we ended up moving to Manchester. And she had really big boobs, and then she went into this shop. We were living in this like little flat, and she was like, "Oh, she give her a card for the fantasy bar." And so we went and just like got these. We actually couldn't afford the rent.
What did you say? The fantasy bar?
Fantasy bar in Manchester it was.
Is that
a table dancing
table
bar?
dancing bar? Wow.
When we were literally, we were on the dole. Like, we were literally spending, like, we were just going out at the weekends, and she'd met a guy, and he had a few quid, and we were going out, you know, like just living, just scraping by, like eating pasta and salad cream, and you know, so we couldn't afford the housing benefit, the rent for this house that we'd got. Sorry, we were on like trying to get housing benefit and stuff.
Just the two of you in this house.
Yeah. And then we found out about this bar, so we both went and invested in a couple of bikinis and went to do an audition at the fantasy bar, and obviously I was doing that, but I found that was a great way of me sort of reclaiming my own
sovereignty,
power.
Your own sovereignty, in a way.
Because I'd been so controlled, and you know, my confidence had completely gone when I was in that relationship, and I felt a sense of power over these men when I was dancing for them. Do you know what I mean?
To that, yeah.
So it was part of my healing in a sense.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, when I met Wes, I was actually dancing, but so obviously snogging him, and then come back up for air and said, "What's your name?" And then my friend come over to me and said, "Get away from me as a footballer." So obviously the footballers used to go in, and it was all, at the time, remember all the kiss and tell stories with all the page 3 girls. It was like, you know, it's like, and we were into that. We were going to work, we were getting our money, and we were getting off. So that was like, oh my God, are you a footballer? You know, so it was like, now I'm going to get tired with that brush, you know, dancer, footballer and all that, you know. So, but anyways, we ended up meeting up. First day, I'll tell you about the first day, because again, it's quite funny. It says a lot about me. And me being a bit older than him as well. So we met up. He was like,
how many years older are you?
3, just under 4 years.
Right, okay.
So we met up in Manchester, and he said, "Oh, I need to go and buy a suit for the players' lounge," because he just got into the first team. So they used to have to wear suits. Now they wear tracksuits, but you used to have to wear suits to go into the players' lounge, look really smart. He took me to Flannels. I've never been in a designer shop in my life. I was in Affleck's Palace buying my clothes, you know. And I walked into this shop, and I felt, oh my God, so much judgment. Like, and they probably weren't judging me. It was obviously my own insecurities, you know, but you do walk in them shops like sometimes, and some of them are like, Like, look, like, who do you think you are? Or who's this he's brought in? You know, obviously Wes being known in there as well. And so it was very daunting. And then afterwards, so he got his suit, and afterwards we come out and he said, what do you want to do now? I said, well, you can take me for some food. And he was like, well, I'm not hungry. I went, well, I am. And then we went into Henry's in Manchester. I ordered a prawn sandwich and chips, and I ate it in front of him. And then obviously the rest is sort of history.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long were you together before he popped the question and you...
Oh, a long time.
Really?
Too long. Yeah. So we had 2 children when he finally asked me.
Right.
And it was something that I'd wanted for a long time, you know, like most girls who have sort of like this little fairy tale wedding planned out in your head. And so I had 1 baby, and it's like, we can't get more commitment than having a child together, can you? But he had real adversity to marriage. He just really wasn't bothered about it. And
his parents still together? Were they together?
They were together, yeah. His parents, his dad's passed away now. So, but yeah.
So it wasn't until 2 children in that he finally popped the question.
Yeah, 9 years.
9 years, yeah.
But yeah, we had a beautiful wedding at Petthorne Castle.
Yeah.
And it was nice that the kids could be there.
Yeah.
The
2 of
Lilia
them.
and Tally could be there. Yeah. And it was a nice and a beautiful day, and it was in a castle. And
So the point we're at now, you're a married woman, 2 children. You're married to a professional footballer, and you've entered into that world of Cheshire housewives, wags, abundance of wealth, and no doubt a beautiful house and all the trappings of the material world. What was that like?
It's a bubble, isn't it? It's a whirlwind, and it's a bubble that you very easily get caught up in. And obviously, when I talk about us being so focused on materialistic things to bring us happiness, and we're sort of conditioned from that from school, really. Go to school, get a job, you know, study hard, get qualifications so you can get a job that pays you well, so you can buy a house and you can get a nice car and you can be happy. And
so did you feel happy at that point? When you look back now in time, were you happy at that point? I've led a lovely life. I've had some beautiful experiences. I've been to some amazing places with Wes. You know, my 3 girls are amazing, and you had quite a charmed life by the sounds of it.
Yeah. But there was. I had a shopping addiction, and I've spoken about this. I did have a shopping addiction because I think, looking back now, there was things that were absent from within me and from within our relationship that I was craving, that led me to throw myself onto shopping.
And that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because often what we find is when we are lacking something inside, when we feel like there's something missing, we divert our attention onto something else to fill that void, don't we? And that's a very common thing to do. And you'll find that sort of like high entrepreneurial, ultra successful people always chasing that next goal, that, you know, like they reach there and then they want to get there. And more often than not, it's because they're missing something inside and they're constantly chasing something to fill the void.
Yeah.
And in retrospect now, would you say that's what you were doing?
Yeah, I think I would say so. And also, like, if we'd have an argument, like, and he'd admit responsibility for this particular arm, and he'd come and he'd buy me a bag to say sorry. So it was all that attachment to that materialistic stuff as well. It was like, oh, he really means it because he's bought me a bag. I'm not saying he didn't really mean it, but it's like he'd show love through, like, the money as well. And it comes down to communication, really, and actually being able to do that with each other, instead of just focusing on the materialistic side. Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit further now in time. The kids are growing up. Hallie's at university.
Yeah.
The other 2 are still at school. And I hope you don't mind me touching, I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning in may already know this, but you're now a single woman, navigating through life, like myself, as a single woman. At what point did this happen, and how are you feeling now? I mean, we've done a big, massive jump here, haven't we?
Yeah. How am I feeling?
So let's go back a little bit. Let's reverse back a little bit. How long were you and Wes together in all?
24. I mean, we're still actually living together at the moment. We're sort of living under the same roof, and we are actually getting on really well. And,
brilliant.
And it's, you know what I mean? It's amicable. We have just grown apart, you know, and it happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm moving out soon, and I think that's really going to be difficult. It's going to be hugely difficult for me and the kids, because it's all right being under the same roof and you know, and because we're getting on as well, and it's like
and all credit to you, by the way, because a lot of breakups, and it's a very common thing, it's probably one of the hardest things from my experience that you'll ever go through, and the fact that you're navigating this in an amicable manner, I think speaks volumes about you and Wes, regardless of what's happened.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's amazing, and I think that's great for the girls to see that. You know, so all power to you for that.
Yeah, definitely. I've lost my train of thought now. What was the question?
So
oh, how will I feel?
Yeah.
I think it's almost like a grieving process.
Absolutely it is.
And this is something that somebody had told me, a friend of mine who's been through it, and it's sort of it's worse than a grieving process, because when you grieve for somebody, they're not there anymore, but this
you're
person
grieving
is
for
still
somebody
there.
who's still there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And although, like, I know it's the right thing to do, but it's also probably going to be the most difficult thing I've ever done, because it's my whole adult life that we've been together.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
So can I ask, I mean, if we look at Leanne Brown today, very spiritual lady, into her fitness, her health, her spirituality massively, you know, just launched her own website with loveleanne.com with e-commerce on the back of it. And, you know, you're running your own podcast. You've literally gone from strength to strength. Now, we've missed out a little bit somewhere in the middle here. And this was when you were in Housewives of Cheshire. Which you didn't stay in that for too long. I think
4 years.
4 years. Well, yeah, compared to some.
6 series. Yeah,
6 series, 4 years.
14 now, is it?
At what point did you start to become more of a spiritual person? And was there a sudden moment where you did wake up? Or at what point do you go from a Cheshire housewife to a spiritual person? Where was the wake up in all of that?
I think with anyone that's well, I know some people do have like a vivid moment, don't they? But mine was sort of like a gradual. I wasn't like sort of wake up this one morning and go, I'm going to be spiritual now from now on. You know, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a light bulb moment. I was always open to, you know, things like readings and you know, the spiritual. My brother was sort of probably more spiritual than me, going to like the what do you call it, like the little events and festivals and stuff like that. And he'd always say, oh, do you want to come? And I'd have the odd reading and stuff, and nothing that really stood out to me. But then I started having crystal healing when I was, so it's like Lola's 11 now. So it was probably about 2 years before I got pregnant with her that I'd started having it. It was almost like a therapy for me as well, because I'd go and, you know, pour my heart out. And obviously I was in a relationship, in that relationship that broke down on the Housewives with a female friend, not mentioning no names, but I think the majority of people know who that is. So yeah, it was. That's why I never say that I regretted going on the show either, because it was a massive learning curve for me, and it probably shown me the people around me that weren't being true to me, like over a gradual process. And Tanya was obviously, so the crystal healing had an impact. That she talked a lot about angels and the healing qualities of crystals and stuff, and I embraced it, and I kind of went into
it. Resonated with you, basically.
I wasn't really meditating at that point on a daily basis, but it was like she used to talk to me about, you should journal and you should write things down, and she could see me doing children's books or see me signing books. Like, this was like years before as well, obviously before I brought out the journal. And meeting Tanya and getting a lot closer with her, obviously.
So you're talking about Tanya Bardsley now, yeah?
Yeah.
A fellow Cheshire housewife.
Yeah. And obviously she was all about, positive thinking and manifestation and like writing. I read her book and then she started recommending other books for me to read. So Tanya was like an influential part of me really delving more into that. And really, I almost felt like I was living in the shadow of that friendship on the show, not Tanya's, Dawn's. And it was almost like, again, that fear of putting myself out there, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, and all that.
So not being your authentic self, really.
Yeah, 100%. And that was all stemming from my childhood.
Of course.
Yeah, and my dad and everything else that came from it, the relationship, all that. It has a massive impact, doesn't it? So that was a massive learning curve, being on the show and just bringing the awareness to me of like, this is not you, and these people aren't like meant to be in your life, and or they're not bringing anything.
So it's like an innate knowing, isn't it? Again, we've talked in the past about your gut instinct. When you feel that something's not right, you don't feel comfortable. And I always say this to my own kids, when you don't feel comfortable in an environment or it doesn't feel right in your gut, exit stage left, and get out and get where you're supposed to be. So basically that's what happened to you. You left Cheshire Housewives, is that right?
I'll tell you the pivotal point of me wanting to leave.
Please
that.
do.
And that was, we were in Gibraltar and we were on a boat. It was like a hotel boat. It's in like just docked. It's like a big, what do you call them, ferries? Like a cruise boat, if you will.
Is this on Cheshire Housewives?
It's on the Housewives, yeah. And we were filming there. So we've been to Gibraltar and we were filming. And we'd been like literally drinking for like 3 days, like, nonstop. And obviously because you kind of do that just to get through the filming because you're waiting around, and then obviously they want you to drink a little bit, but then they try and cap it and try and stop you drinking. Then you're buying your own and getting a bit more drunk. And when
sounds quite manipulated.
Oh yeah,
and controlled. Yeah.
So there was a point where we'd been up, and because this argument was dragging on, and because it wasn't even an argument, it wasn't getting to a pivotal point because there was no way of them ending it on a cliffhanger. So they kept the cameras running and running and running. And I was just like, what am I doing here? It was like 2:00 in the morning. And I felt like, when you visualize yourself doing something, I felt like just getting up and jumping off the end of the boat, because that's how I felt like I just had enough. And just the manipulation that was going on revolving the particular person, because she wasn't getting enough attention in this particular scene. And I remember a presence being stood behind me, and me stood there and, like visualizing me standing up and walloping her, giving punching her, because I was like, I need to get out of this show. Like, this is it for me. Like, it's not serving me. It doesn't feel good. And do I really need to do this, sit up? Because I was like, in the end, I was like, guys, it's 2:00 in the morning, and we had 2 of them crying, and it was like they just kept it rolling, and I was just like, no, this is not for me.
Sounds like my idea of hell. That.
Yeah, and then obviously I knew that was the end of my last series.
So you told them that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Before I had a big kick off on the reunion show, yeah. Picked up an ashtray which was made of foam, which was probably a good thing because I wanted to throw it at somebody.
God, I never watched Wives of Cheshire, so you'll have to forgive me. So you're going to have to colour the picture a little bit.
Spared.
I've been spared. So you left that show.
Yeah. And
then you started pursuing your own pathway in a more spiritual sense. Is that right?
Yeah, it was the charity work that I really delved into first.
Yeah.
I really wanted to immerse myself into something that was positive and empowering, because the show was like
trained the life out of you by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was like, it was going to be empowering to women and all of that, and it was the most disempowering thing when you think of it. It's just like the arguments that were shown week by week, and
the shopping, the arguments, the glitz, the glamour. Yeah, that's not what life's about, really.
No, some of the women do have businesses that are run well, but there was so little shown of that. It was more about the argument. So I was like, I want to do something. I got in touch with Jean, who was hypnobirthing for my 3rd child. And it was about hypnobirthing that I wanted to promote, because I was so passionate about it and I'd had such a lovely experience. And then Jean just told me about her trip to Kenya, where she'd been witnessing for the grassroots charity with female genital mutilation, which just really was like blow me away, the barbaric procedure that still goes on to this day. And I was like, what can I do to help? And I was actually still I hadn't left the show at that point. It was like the last series I was on. I was doing a parachute jump. So I said to Jean, like, why don't you, if you can create, at this point she'd just been over, she was sending money over to a few of the girls that she'd met to stop them being sold to marriage by their father.
Wow.
So that's what happens, the dowry, that then they get paid for the family. And so the girls don't get an education because they get married off. So she was just sending money. So I was like, you need to create a charity, like a page, so I can donate money for this parachute jump. So that's sort of like where One Woman at a Time was born. And then ended up going to India with Jean, took her with me because Wes got signed to Kerala Blasters for one season in India. Jean's such a well-travelled woman. She's been all around India, so I felt really safe bringing her before I took the girls over at the Christmas time. And we found a refuge over there, which then we supported. And then I went over to Kenya in the January.
So you got quite involved in a lot of charity work.
Yeah.
Now that is a stark contrast
Yeah.
to Wives of Cheshire.
Yeah.
Did you feel more comfortable in that environment?
Being more comfortable is an understatement, because being in Kenya was like having a wee in a hole and like
Exactly, that's the point I'm making, going from Housewives of Cheshire to weeing in a hole in Kenya.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was such a humbling experience just to see and be open my eyes, and not only in India but then in Kenya, and the how like these women have they live these lives of such different we live such a privileged life, don't we, in this country, and we have, I mean, FGM still goes on in this country. It is a cultural thing that is. But yeah, it was just really opened my eyes to how lucky I actually am, and really made me appreciate everything coming back home. So
we're starting to see life changing and snowballing here and going down the route more to where you are today. So we've got involved in charity work. We've left Housewives of Cheshire.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there?
So I'd started writing my journal, Grace, Gratitude, Grit, while I was on the show, towards the last year of the show, like just writing things, like things that resonated with me, like I was going to write a book, and then a friend of mine, Alyssa, who's also been on here, said, why don't you write a journal? She's a writer as well, so she co-written it with me. She added bits to it, and checked the spelling and all the rest of it, made it sound better. But my book I launched the following year then, Grace, Gratitude, Grit, my self-help
Grace,
journal.
Gratitude, Grit.
Yeah, which now it's not available now because I got so many copies, I've sold them. I always think about, should I get some more copies done, or like I think I just want to write a new one now, and maybe just add a bit more or make it a bit more autobiographical. Is that the right word I'm using? Just obviously to give people an insight to what's happened since then, and did that, and then just really delved into that, like the meditation and the mind, and just started. It was the biggest thing, I suppose, was the start of the pandemic. Actually, I'll go back a bit. It was actually the HPV vaccine that made me start researching about vaccines, and that
so
really
just
opened
backtrack a little bit. The HPV vaccine, which was pre-pandemic.
Yes. So I did a post about that saying it just didn't resonate with me. And I felt like I want to learn a bit more about this because it was quite new. Like I didn't have it when I was younger. So I was like, what is it about? I was obviously expected to give it to my girls. Hallie actually had one of hers, and the second one came along, and then it was offered to Lily. And I was like, no, I'm not sure about this. I'd never given the flu one or anything like that. I'd never had it because they get offered it when they're younger, don't they? And I just kind of like really opened a can of worms with that, and then decided through my own research of how many injuries had been caused by it and the ingredients in it, and then obviously went on to look into other immunisations that we give our children, and which I'd give all my children them. I didn't even think to question it, and then did a post about it, and I was just blown away at the backlash that it created, which then spurred me on to look further into the.
So what year was this then? given that the virus started in 2020?
Yeah, 2019.
2019, so a year before.
And I'd also, I think, because I questioned the HPV again, because I started to question the medical industry because of my implants. I was getting them taken out. So I was going to get them replaced, heard about breast implant illness, had a lot of the symptoms, and then looked at how the FDA had approved them, and that all these women had all these ailments and symptoms, but they were being ignored, and they'd gone through won court battles through them to say that they were fully within the right, and but everything had been suppressed. Nobody had found out this, and they're still offering like that they're 100% safe. So that opened my eyes a lot to the medical industry, which led me then to question the HPV, which then, when the pandemic hit, that was the end of 2019, that was like, hang on a minute.
Here we go again.
And then who was behind it? Kill Gates. So obviously he was one of the person that was mentioned in the HPV going to India, immunising all these young girls that had injuries, like over 500,000 injuries of young girls apparently, and there was a big court case going on with him not being allowed back into India. So all this, so I did my little piece to camera saying, I'm questioning the world and blah blah blah, and then that got in the paper, and it was just like, then each like moment of what's happened, and when I got the backlash, it didn't stop me from doing it. It made me think there's something in this, because people were so adverse to, listening. And that told me that was fear of everything that you've led to believe then is not true. Well, the majority of it is all bullshit.
Yeah. So we're talking about 2 years ago now, 2 to 3 years ago now. You've really gone down many a rabbit hole, like many of us do.
Yeah.
And you've realised, or, you're waking up to the fact that we have been indoctrinated maybe since birth, really, education, the whole system and structures of life. You're discovering, or you feel like you're discovering, have been there to suppress us as human beings. And you're really sort of like starting to go against the grain, shall we say, like a lot of people do.
Yeah, it started. I've been come totally the other way against the grain. It was... it's just such a journey. Life is just such a journey, isn't it? Learning about energy and sound and frequency and language, and how every single thing affects us. I was speaking to a friend of mine, Ruby, I'm going to get her on the podcast actually, and she was saying like how she has done the research, how we used to not even speak before.
In previous civilizations.
Yeah, we wouldn't actually create the sound because each sound would affect us. And she had Julius Caesar apparently put straw on the ground because he was realizing that the sound of people's footprints on the concrete was affecting people. So to prevent it to be like a softer sound, that's just mind blowing, isn't it? And you think,
well, it is. You're talking my language now. Everything I do is about sound and like vibrational frequencies, and we understand that sort of like the words we use have energy behind them. The sounds that come out of our mouths. It's a big subject.
It's energy. Energy is literally everything, isn't it?
Yeah, and in 50 minutes we've gone from shots in Manchester and now we're talking light language and energy, and wow, what a shift you've done over the last years of your life, and what a journey you've been on. I mean, you've literally gone from there to there and everything in between.
I think this is happening for a lot of people
as
well.
It is, and this is really interesting because I think, I assume that the people who are watching this podcast are the more awake, shall we say, kind of people who are tuning in, and we're seeing this rise in humanity where people are, this waking up period where people are understanding and looking up and looking round and thinking everything that I've been led to believe up until this point is probably not actually true, which is a fascinating time to be alive, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The rise in people's consciousness and the power that we actually have, and it's a process, isn't it? And it's just continuing to learn. obviously first exposing the reality of what's the indoctrination and what's been happening is the hardest part, I suppose. And I did get myself lost in that for a good, well, probably 12 months, you know, of me constantly like talking about, oh, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, this is the reality of it, the paedophiles, the adrenochrome, you know, like sharing all that stuff. And then when my account got taken down, which was last July, it was the morning of one of the protests that I was going to in London. I woke up in the hotel room and my mate was like, where's your account gone?
And how many followers did you have at that point?
240,000.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because we hear this so often that, you know, people with a big profile and a big following, they say anything against the mainstream narrative and boom, they disappear off the face of the earth. So if that in itself is, well, if you're not asking questions at that point, like why? I thought we had freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Why has that happened?
Yeah, exactly. That was a big like, oh, wow. So it was sort of like a realization. It was the one of the best things that happened to me actually last year, because I was so consumed with it. And I know I helped a lot of people like plant the seed and wake people up, or, you know, I had loads of people say thank you, like you were my lifesaver. And even still now, you know, I thought I was losing my mind and I knew that something wasn't right, or you made me realize. And I'm grateful that I had to, obviously it's a journey that I had to take, but that was sort of universal divine intervention, if you will, by taking that away from me, made me be like, who am I? Am I just Leanne Brown with a 240,000 following on Instagram? Am I just my Instagram profile? Will people still want to work with me?
That's a really interesting point and a really valid point. And I love that you've pointed that out. Who am I? I lose 250,000 followers. Who am I with no followers?
Yeah.
And yet look what you've done since then.
Yeah, but this is the point. So at the end of last year, I was like, looking back at my year, and obviously I'd signed up to do the boxing last year. So obviously I was like, they obviously based it on people's following and you know, who's got biggest following, because not biggest, but if you've got a following, you've got a profile, then obviously you're going to promote it. And I was half thinking, they might tell me they don't want me to do it anymore. Like, you know.
Now that I've lost 250,000 followers.
I've not got the following to promote it. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't, obviously. And I just got my head stuck right into that. And so like at the end of the year, I look back, I started my podcast as well in July. I'd obviously had a backup account, but obviously I'd only just opened it. So it's on like that intuition that I've almost must have known that was going to happen. So I'd started this other account and then started the podcast because I wanted to get my word out there without putting it all over social media and thinking of a different way. I had started it. Maybe I'd got my thing taken down first, but ultimately, when I look back at the first 6 months, I was like, what did I achieve on the first 6 months of last year? I didn't really achieve anything that was a personal achievement. I helped people like through sharing and I learned a lot about the world and went down the rabbit holes and not everything.
Which is a massive achievement.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose. But then actually a personal achievement, which is I did the boxing, I did the podcast, you know. What else did I do? The retreats, you know, like I started the Divine Feminine Retreats with Jess. You know, there's so much that happened within that final 6 months because I come away from it thinking, after that went, right, I want to still help people, but I want to do it not in a way of projecting that fear because I feel like at that stage, whoever's not realised that something's not right in the world probably never is at that point. So then I really homed in on helping people through a positive way, through spreading light and love and meditation. Started doing my weekly meditations on my With Love Leanne page. And that just talking about what was going on, you know, with regards to, you know, the schooling, how I was dealing with it. And that I feel like was much more powerful at that stage anyways. But I think you have to sort of go through that process of the realization of the world is corrupt. This is what's going on. And then you have to get to a point of, I'm not going to continue to create that reality because ultimately what you're putting out there, and if you're constantly putting out the corruption and the fear and sharing that constantly, that's the reality you're going to live in.
Absolutely.
But if you're coming from higher vibrational state, then you can create that higher vibrational life.
Yeah, and that's so interesting, isn't it? Because, we're always told that, as human beings, we have immense power that we just aren't tapping into.
No.
As human beings. We have utter sovereignty over ourselves. And we have immense power. And this is what part of what this whole reset is. It's, waking us up to the fact that we have power to project and create our own reality. And I think what you're doing now is absolute testament to that. I mean, look where we've been on this journey over all these years, and look where you are now. And what does the future hold? I mean, you educate your kids in conscious classrooms.
Yeah.
You're doing these podcasts, you meditate, you've got your own website, and it's all about love and light, vibration, frequency, positivity. I'm very much going down that. I mean, look at the people you've had on your podcast. You're dipping into common law, legalese, human trafficking.
Yeah.
Wow, all these subjects that are being covered. And I mean, what's next? Where are we going from here? How do you see the future panning out? What are your goals moving forward?
Well, I'm just so grateful to Jess of started the Divine Feminine Retreats, and that has been so beautiful. It's such a beautiful experience, obviously, with the belief coding that Jess invited me to do the facilitation. She's running a workshop as well next week, which I'm going to be learning a whole lot more as well on that, because I want to be able to help people with the belief coding and changing our subconscious beliefs, and it's helping me a lot with regards to what I've spoke about with my dad issues and stuff.
It's funny, isn't it? As we start putting focus on other people and being of service to other people, like what I do at the Harmonic Egg in Chester, when we focus on helping other people, it kind of takes you in a totally different avenue to life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is so fulfilling and rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. It's just been so easy. Everything just aligned and fell into place with that. Like Jessica on the podcast, we're chatting about, I said, I wanted to do retreats. Let's do a retreat. Anyways, and Divine Feminine Retreats has been born, and it's been effortless. It's been fun. It's booking itself up. Like, we've got the April one. We're on our third one now at the end of April. And people are still saying, is it full? Is it full? We want to come on. We've not released another date yet. But it's just effortless. And it's bringing the Divine Feminine movement. It's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah. The women standing into their sovereignty, into their power. And that's the rise of the Divine Feminine. And bringing these women together, oh gosh, the transformation that happens from the minute they step into their power, and step into the retreat, really, from the end of the week, and the bonds that they make, and the shifts that they create, and obviously just to see that, and the support network that is provided, because obviously it's not just like come to the retreat, you go home, see you later. There's a WhatsApp group, and it's constant, and even though me and Jess are really active on it, they're supporting each other, and they've found each other. Yeah,
and a few of my clients have been on your retreats. And
have they?
Yeah, we've got a few crossovers there with our clients, which is lovely. It's all coming from the same place. And, and as you say, it's effortless, it's easy, it's fun, it's exciting. This is what life should be all about.
Exactly.
This is what it should be about.
Exactly. I always say, like, if you feel like you're it's too much of an effort, I'm not saying like sit on your ass and everything's going to be coming to me, and because you do still have to do
of course
work.
You do. You've got to put action behind it all,
yeah,
haven't you?
Of course, but it should feel fun. It should feel something that you're passionate about. It should feel like you're in the boat, you're paddling downstream, not fighting against the current, swimming upstream, out of your boat, swimming against the current. And that's how it should be. And it's been a bit of a learning curve for me, and to say no to certain things that actually feel like they're not in alignment with me, or energetically I'm pushing against it. There's resistance, and it's getting that awareness of that resistance.
It's tuning into your higher self, basically, isn't it? With your gut instinct, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, whatever you resonate with. It's just understanding what fits with me and what's right for me, and taking that step in that direction. And it's getting rid of the fear, isn't it?
The fear.
And just understanding that you've got power within yourself. Yeah. Step into it.
Definitely. It's like the Divine Feminine, the Divine iconic divine show.
Of course. I mean, we're coming up to the end of the hour now, so let's quickly just touch on that. Not only have you achieved all this, you're now co-presenting on Iconic Media, which is absolutely fantastic, an alternative media channel for those who haven't heard of Iconic Media. And I think that's the way the world's going, isn't it? It's
Definitely.
the alternative, whether it's alternative health like myself, alternative media, alternative Twitter, alternative whatever.
Yeah.
People are moving away from the mainstream, and independents all over the place are popping up left, right and centre, and it's just growing in strength, which is amazing. So now, quickly, let's touch on where you are now, co-presenting at Iconic, and where's the future? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So the Iconic is Leanne coming to the studio onto the podcast. I feel like it's been a real channel, the podcast, because Jess came on, then we did the retreats. Leanne came on, then I got the show. We were talking obviously about Leanne doing it with Jenna, who was the original
right.
co-presenter.
And again, Jenna's been to see me, you've been to see me.
Yeah, and then obviously Jenna left, and then Leilani just put my name forward and sort of just fell into it. And I am loving it. I'm loving it. Meeting so many interesting people, obviously doing the podcast, I do the same, but it's just so insightful. And because it's like not restricted, you can just be open and honest on there, and there's no censorship. And and it's not just about like the corruption and like all the rest of it that's going on. Like, it's more a bit about my podcast, where it's exposing things like sound healing and people that are going to live off grid, and surviving off natural medicines, and
it's like we're doing a 360 degree in life. It's like we're going back to ancient civilizations and the power that they were using then, because in effect, what people don't understand was ancient civilizations before we existed were much more powerful than us, much more advanced than others. And I think you just need to wake up to that and understand it. And now we're sort of stepping back into that arena again, which is a really exciting time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's quite new. Divine's quite new, so we will see where the future holds with that. Obviously, it's just going to keep growing, and I'm happy to continue like doing that for as long as I'm just so open to what the universe will bring. And that's I think
the
I'm
key,
in
isn't it?
a state, like I put the post up, surrendering to the state of life as what did I put? Something about the flow of life. Yeah, surrender is a state of a flow of life, just being open to what it will bring. And as long as it's intuitively resonating with me and tapping into that and not causing any resistance, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and that it feels
right.
It feels
and
right.
And that's the key to finish off on, isn't it? If we align what we feel is truly us, there's no resistance. We just get in the flow of life. The universe will just present opportunities for you as and when, and it'll all keep unfolding.
Exactly.
So that's brilliant, and you are testament to all that. So thank you for allowing me to put you in the spotlight today. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. And next stop, here we come.
Yeah. Look forward to it. Maybe you'll have to interview me in the next 12 months and see where I am then. Hopefully I've made my first million or something. I will have made my first million. Thank you for interviewing me.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.